Okay, so let's start by talking about basics of pen testing concepts. So there are three things that we have got here. That is, one is your black box pen test, or you can say black box testing, white box testing, and gray box testing. So who is going to explain this thing?
In the black box testing, the organization for whom you are going to perform the penetration testing to check if the system are safe or not, they will not provide you any information about the infrastructure of their system and servers, etc. While in the white box testing, all the information will be provided by the organization. And the in gray box, some information are provided and some are not.
Right. Okay, we have got something in chat as well. So what happens in case of black box testing is we have zero knowledge about the target. Okay, we do not know anything about the target. In case we are going for a pen test, we do not know what kind of internal infrastructure it is, what kind of network topology are we going to target, what kind of operating systems are there in my target network. Okay, it's just like how an attacker, how an outsider is going to attack the operator, attack the environment. Okay, we try to impersonate that thing. Okay, then we have got white box testing. So what happens in case of white box testing is basically you are provided with everything, all the information related to testing. Okay, you know, you probably are going to have the source code of an application. If you are testing an application, if you are testing in a network, you would know the network topology, what kind of operating system you are up against. Everything is going to be known. Okay, everything is going to be provided to you by the organization, and then you are going to perform your testing. That is white box testing. And in case of gray box testing, it's like you have partial knowledge or partial information about your target. You have some information, you do not have some information. That is gray box testing. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
sir, any example for black box texting?
Like, what kind of example do you want? I already gave you an example, right? Like, you are going for a pen test and no information is provided to you.
So, please can you repeat? Actually, the network is really low over here.
I'm saying, like, you have been hired by a third party organization for performing a penetration test. Okay. And they are uh, black box testing is when the tester doesn't have any prior knowledge, right? And working for the software or network. So what happens is basically, let's say you have been engaged by some kind of an organization who wants to who wants you to perform the pen test. Okay. So in case of white box pen test, you are already going to be provided with the access. Like, let's say either you are going to be provided some kind of an Ethernet cable that you can directly plug into your laptop, plug into your system. Okay. In case of black box test, pen test, you are not going to be provided to with any access, no Wi-Fi credentials, no Ethernet cable. Okay. You need to attack the environment as if a black hat attacker is going to attack. That's what happens in case of black box pen test. Okay. With no prior knowledge about the network.
So, sir, which testing is more prominent in the market?
White box and somewhat gray box, you can also say.
And sir, so if I say that black box testing is really unconventional, so what kind of organizations usually go for black box testing?
How can you say that it is unconventional?
Because it's not so prevalent in the market.
It is not that prevalent, but that does not mean that people don't opt for it. Now and then you will see that corporates do opt for it. It's like if you have got 4 white box pen tests scheduled throughout the year, you are going to have one black box pen test as well scheduled in that year. Okay. Students are still joining. Right. I believe Shashwat, that was your question. Chat.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's proceed further. What next? There's a concept known as exploitation. What is exploitation? Hmm. PLOI. Exploitation is simply attacking the service, hmm, running an exploit, gaining access to a system. That is your exploitation phase. Probably we talked about this in the phases of hacking as well. Hmm. How is it different from vulnerability scanning? So there are two phases essentially in VAPT. One is VA, another one is PT. Exploitation happens in the pen test part. Okay. What happens in case of VA? What happens in VA?
We look for known vulnerabilities.
Okay. Anyone else would like to try? Vulnerability assessment, right? That's the full form. What else? We just look for the vulnerabilities. We just scan the network. Okay. We just see what all services are running. We try to search for any known vulnerability. That's all. We do not run any exploit against it. We do not try to have remote access against the system. Okay. That's what happens in VA. And there are chances that sometimes a corporate can hire a different team for VA and a different team for PT. Okay. A separate report for VA is built after VA is done, and that report is handed over to PT team, and then PT team is going to take care of the pen testing part. Okay. Then there's a concept of privilege escalation. Privesk. What do you understand by privilege escalation?
Sir, can you please repeat what you explained about VAPT? I kind of lost the signal here, so I couldn't hear that.
So what I was saying is VA and PT are two different parts. Okay. In VA, we only scan the target network. Okay. We just look for what all services are running, what all ports are open, what is the version of the service that is running. Okay. We try to look for if there is any known vulnerability that exists with respect to that service. Okay. We just look for that. We do not try to touch that service. We do not try to exploit that service. We do not try to gain access to the target system. What happens in case of PT is we try to actively exploit and gain a shell access. Okay. We try to see what all damage can actually be caused. Okay. If an attacker is going to attack this infrastructure. That's what happens in PT. And another thing that I talked about is it is not mandatory that there is going to be a single team who is, or single organization or a single person who is going to do VA and PT, both of them. Okay. There can be a separate team for VA and there can be a separate team for PT. Okay. And what happens is once VA is done, a VA report is prepared, vulnerability assessment report. And then that vulnerability assessment report is provided to the PT team. Okay. And then that PT team tries to act upon that VA report and tries to see if we have got an active shell on the target machine or not. If the if the service that you have identified is actually exploitable or not. That's what happens in PT.
So, sir, the VA team does not do enumeration, right?
They do the enumeration. Enumeration is not exploitation.
Okay.
We were not able to gain access in the enumeration part, right? Gaining access means gaining a remote shell over the system. It does not mean that like I'm just exploring the website, I'm just going through the directories. Okay, that does not mean gaining access. Gaining,
Sir, but when we were trying to infiltrate the FTP port,
that is
uh,
not gaining access.
okay, so
I do not have
while
remote control over the machine. Until unless I do not have shell over the machine, that is not exploitation.
okay, so when we were entering commands on the FTP shell, that was just enumeration.
Yeah.
Okay.
So who fixes those vulnerabilities? Yeah.
So the PT team at the end of the day, they are going to create the PT report and they are going to provide with reasonable suggestions what all can be done. Okay. Either the company can ask the PT team itself to patch everything. Okay. Like you exploited it, you know this stuff better. Just do some patch management as well. Do some upgradation as well for us. We'll pay you some more. Okay. Or else the system admins are going to take care of this stuff, the patching and the mitigation and the upgradation stuff. Okay.
Okay.
The server administrators, DB administrators, those are the people who are responsible for all of this stuff. Okay, let's talk about another concept known as privisk, also known as privilege escalation. What is privilege escalation? What do you understand by privilege escalation?
Some files or locations are not accessible to everyone. So if someone who has not access to that place or file need to access it, he or she need to escalate the privilege in order to access those files or location.
Okay. Anyone else would like to try?
Accessing doesn't mean only reading. To write or modify, you need privileges. So that's a privilege escalation.
Okay. What else?
After getting access to the system, we try to become the admin. We try to get admin access.
Hmm. So essentially, what happens is when you are trying to exploit your target system, not every time you are going to get a shell with highest privileges. Okay. Sometimes, let's say you got a shell with a normal user. Okay. The user can be like, let's just say, user one. Okay. And that user one does not have all the permissions, all the privileges to explore all the directories, to do everything. Like if I take an example of Linux, the highest privilege user is in Linux
Root.
root, right? So until unless you are not root, you have not fully compromised the machine. Okay. Maybe you have gained access with a low level shell, okay, with a low level permissions, low level privileges. So then what happens is the attacker tries to escalate his or her own privileges up till up to that topmost level, that is root. In case of Linux, that is root. In case of Windows, that is in case of Windows, what
Administrator.
administrator. What else? There's another well-known name for it.
System administrator.
Anti-authority system. SYSTM. Anti-authority system. Okay. That's the highest level service account that is possible in Windows. Okay. So like you logged in with a user one. In privilege escalation, it can be right away, like you are jumping from user one to the root, or it may depend. Like from user one, you escalated your privileges to user two, and from user two, you became user three, and then you became the root user. Okay. So that depends upon scenario to scenario, but essentially this process is known as privilege escalation. Okay. Simply escalating your privileges to the highest level. That is privilege escalation. Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
when we do privilege escalation in Windows, does it have something to do with Active Directories, or is it out of context?
So if there is no Active Directory implemented, would I be able to escalate my privileges? The
That's what I'm asking. I mean,
Yeah, the answer is yes. Okay, not every Windows operating system is going to be a part of Active Directory. So that depends upon your the corporate to corporate infrastructure, right? If there is your AD involved, then AD is, if the AD is being implemented, then definitely AD is going to play a role in between. If AD does not exist, still there is going to be possibility of privilege escalation, right? So privilege escalation has is not totally dependent upon AD. Okay. So here you can see a lot of ways, whole lot of ways that you can use for Windows privilege escalation. Okay. And I cannot see AD anywhere here. Okay. Getting back to my point. So what else do we have in the basic concepts? Probably pivoting. What do you mean by pivot? Pivoting with respect to pen test.
so you used this term in the previous class. You said a phrase when you were telling us about whaling. So we made a point that we can use spear phishing as a stepping stone to whaling and then pivot around the network.
Yeah. So essentially what pivoting is, like you have access to a specific machine in a network. Okay. And now you want to access other machines which are connected to that network. Okay. Now let's say those machines are not accessible directly through the internet. Okay. Let me try to create a diagram over here. There's this machine, let's say this is connected to the internet, and there's this another machine which is not connected to the internet, but somehow these machines are connected to each other. Okay. And you have exploited this machine you have exploited. So what you can do is you can try to pivot your way and access this machine, not through the internet directly. Okay. Because you cannot access it directly. So you can access this machine through the internet, and then you can make your way here. Okay. That is pivoting. Trying to access machines which are only accessible through the internal network. That is one thing that you do not have initial access to. I don't know if you guys have heard about SSH tunneling and pivoting concepts. SSH tunneling. This is one way. Port forwarding is another way. Okay, port forwarding is one way of for pivoting. Okay, and do we have any good article over here? SSH tunneling to access restricted servers. Yeah, this one is good. This is a good article that you can refer for SSH tunneling. Okay. Okay. Let's move ahead. Hmm. Okay. Let's talk about some other attack vectors. Okay. Or let's talk about sniffing today. Hmm. Sniffing. So what is sniffing? Who is going to explain this word? What is sniffing?
Monitoring or capturing the data packets flowing in a network.
Right, monitoring or capturing the data packets. Okay. More of a passive attack. Okay, sniffing in itself is not an attack. Have you guys heard about MITMs? MITM.
Yes, sir.
Okay, for example, tapping mobiles, phones, etc. Right, tapping is an example for sniffing. So sniffing is essentially your capturing of data packets. Okay, whatever packets are being transferred to and fro in your network or from or to and fro from your device. That is known as sniffing. Okay. MITM basically stands for man in the middle attack. Okay. I hope you guys know how to use Wireshark. Do you guys know how to use Wireshark?
So very basic.
Very basic. Okay. So let's say, not very extensively. Yeah. Let's say you are inside a network. Okay. Let me try to make a normal network, an ideal Soho network here. Okay. I have got 3 machines in my network. There's a router over here. Okay. This is a router. And I can name these machines as well. Like, let me just name them as A, B, and C. Okay. So let's talk about sniffing. So there are dedicated tools for sniffing. Okay. The example tools are like Wireshark. Wireshark is one example. If you want to have GUI based tool, Wireshark is the example. Or else if you want to have CLI based tool, you will have TCP dump, CLI based. So that depends upon scenario to scenario. If you only have GUI based access, you are going to use Wireshark. If you have CLI, you are going to use TCP dump. Okay. Now, let's say I am running a Wireshark. I'm running a Wireshark on this machine. Okay. And there are a whole lot of communication happening in my network. Okay. Let's say B and C are communicating with each other. A and B are communicating with each other. A and C are communicating with each other. So what all conversation would I be able to capture here? Hmm.
The password, username and password.
Session IDs. Maybe.
Right. So that is like generic form. Okay. That okay. If some kind of passwords are being entered, I would be
The
able to
information of all the known ports are can
in
be retrieved.
information of all the
Known ports.
known ports can be retrieved. And what about other ports?
They too can be retrieved. I don't know.
Okay. So the information related to known ports can be retrieved, and information other any other information can also be retrieved. Nice. Okay. Okay. Let's say B is trying to connect to internet. There is some kind of a communication happening like this as well. Right. So I would be able to capture passwords. I would be able to read passwords. I would be able to capture session ID and all that stuff. Right. That is right. So now further, what I have here is I have provided you with this scenario that this is an ideal network. Okay. There are three machines here, A, B, and C. Okay. A is trying to communicate with C. A is trying to communicate with B. So there is some communication happening between A and B, A and C, B and C, and B and internet. Okay, and B is sending some data to internet and receiving some data from the internet, probably trying to surf some website. Okay, so now my question is, if you are running Wireshark on device A, on machine A, what all communications would you be able to capture and see in your Wireshark? That's my question.
Sir, isn't it that A can capture all the packets which are being transferred in the network, but most of them would be encrypted, so encrypted or hashed, so very no, it won't be very useful to A.
We are going to talk about that as well. So, but still, that is not the answer to my question. I'm not asking if it is going to be useful or not. I'm just saying that what all communications out of the mentioned one would A be able to capture. What you said was it would be able to capture all the conversation, whatever is happening between A to C, B to C, A to B, or B to internet. A would be able to capture everything. Hmm. Anyone else would like to try? So how many of you guys understand what is hub, what is router, what is switch? The networking devices. What is hub? What is switch?
Sir, switches function on the data link layer and routers function on the network layer.
And what about hub?
The hub
Sir,
does
Works on
not
the
have any
physical layer.
address.
sir,
It just
yes.
broadcasts the message.
So it's not used.
Hub is not used.
No, it is used. It's not.
Hmm? So you told me something about the layers. On which layer hub is going to work? Tell me.
So on physical layer.
On physical layer. On data link layer, switch is going to work, and router is going to work on
Network layer.
network layer. Okay. Have you heard about switches working on network layer?
Yes, sir.
What is the condition then for them to work on network layer?
Just
Sir, they would act as a hub if they work on network layer. They would broadcast all the packets.
They are going to broadcast packets if they are going to work on network layer. No, no, that is not the case.
If the switch uses IP address,
The
so
switch
the
does not uses IP address.
if that is a level 3 layer 3
Switch.
switch, yes sir.
Then only it would be able to use an IP address if it is a layer 3 switch. Okay.
Yes sir.
Switch is not going to be called as a layer 3 switch if it uses an IP address. Instead, vice versa is true. Like if the switch is a layer 3 switch, then only it would be able to have an IP address. Otherwise, not. Though those switches are also known as managed switches, layer 3 switches. Hmm. Well, keeping things to the convention, okay, we consider switches as layer 2 devices only, router as layer 3 devices, and hubs as layer 1 devices. Okay. How does hub work? Hub basically, you can say they are very dumb devices. Okay. They have no brain, they have no memory. Okay. And whatever input you are going to provide to a hub, the hub is simply going to broadcast it to all the other devices that are connected to your network. Okay. That is the case of hub. I hope this thing is clear. Hmm? Yeah, here it is. One member sent to hub, the hub broadcast to all members. Okay. That is how hub works. No brain. It does not decide. If let's say one was trying to send something, let's say Alice was trying to send something to Bob, okay, and there's a hub in between. Everyone is going to listen to the communication that is happening between Alice and Bob. Okay, there is no privacy in case of hub, no confidentiality, nothing. Now, how are we going to define switch? A layer 2 switch.
it is going to filter the MAC addresses, like whatever the data packets we get, it is going to filter those data packets according to the MAC addresses it have, and then send the data packets, or else it will drop.
Okay, so switches are essentially your layer 2 devices. Yeah, I believe somebody was trying to answer. So switches are basically your layer 2 devices, and we also refer switches as smart hubs. When you are going to add some brain to an hub, it is going to act like a switch. When you are going to add some memory to a hub, it is going to act like a switch. So what happens in case of switch is there is no IP address involved in case of switch. Why? Because IP address comes at layer 3, but switch operates at layer 2. Okay. At layer 2, we have got MAC addresses or physical addresses. I hope you guys understand what is a MAC address, what is an IP address. Right. Great. So what?
So where are hubs used?
Where are hubs used? Interview question.
No, sir, I said that hubs are not used,
Yeah.
and then you said you had a very rhetorical question, so I'm
Yeah.
asking.
Right. So a lot of places where you would have heard broadcasting, like if I need to give you an example, at railway station platforms, have you noticed the announcements hmm, that happens parallelly on all of these stations, all of the speakers at the same point of time? Just an example. Okay. So it is not like that hubs are not used. Hubs are used. There are specific places where hubs are going to be used. Okay. In those networks where we do not need any confidentiality, where we do not need privacy, at those places we can use hubs. Okay.
And sir, can you please repeat how switches are used on the network layer?
So I was saying that network on network layer, yeah, on network layer we have got nowadays what happens in case of Soho routers. hmm, So the router that you would be using in your home, that's a Soho router, right? So there's a switch that is inbuilt in that. You can call it as a layer 3 switch as well. Okay. So what happens is if you are going to assign an IP address, just give me a minute, guys. Just give me a minute. Yeah, so I was telling you that if you are going to assign an IP address, if there it's a managed switched, okay. If it is a layer 3 switch, then an IP address can also be assigned to a switch. By default, IP addresses are not assigned to switch. IP addresses are assigned to routers. Okay. So if it's a layer 3 switch, an IP address can be assigned and the switch can act as your gateway as well. Okay. Okay. Essentially, what switch do is the term is known as switching. Okay. What router do is routing. Hmm? Now don't say what hub do is hubbing. That's not the case. What hub do is broadcast. Switching is done by switch. Routing is done by routers. Okay. Routing is basically done on the basis of source and destination IP addresses. Switching is done basically on the basis of source and destination MAC addresses. Okay. So basically what happens in case of switches, they maintains a CAM table. CAM table. Mm, yeah, this is an example of CAM table, or else, no, this is not an example. Yeah, this is an example of CAM table. So what happens inside a CAM table is there are going to be two columns. Okay. One is going to be your MAC addresses, that is your physical addresses, and another one is going to be your interface, the physical port. Okay. So what switch is going to do is switch is going to maintain a record of all of this stuff, like which device is connected on which port. Okay. So whenever a packet comes to the switch, so what switch is going to do is switch is going to look into the packet. Switch is going to see what destination MAC address has been written in the packet, and it is going to look into the CAM table. It is going to find that MAC address, and the packet is going to be forwarded to that interface. It is going to be sent out through that interface. That's how switching is done, basically. Okay. So why I started asking you guys about hub, switch, and router is because because I was not getting an appropriate reply for this question. So let's talk about sniffing in case of hubs. Hmm. Let's say passive sniffing hub. Yeah, this is a good image. So what happens in case of hub is if you try to turn on a sniffer in a hub network, let's say this is where you start sniffing, okay, and there is an active communication that is happening between Alice and Bob, okay. If you start a sniffer here, you would be able to intercept that communication, okay. You would be able to read through all the communication that is happening between two, Alice and Bob, only if you are connected to a hub, because by default hub is sending you that communication. Now if you are connected to a switch based network, okay, if you are connected to a switch network or a router, you can say, where is this option? Clear. Yeah, talking about this case scenario, if you start a sniffer here, you would only be able to capture those packets which are coming to you, okay. How would you be able to capture those packets which are not even coming to you? Hmm? You would not be able to capture those packets, right or wrong?
Yes, sir.
Right. So if I need to elaborate upon the communication between B and C, how B and C are going to communicate? Packets are going to be sent from B to router, and the router is going to send it to the switch. Oh, sorry, send it to the C. The C is going to send a reply. This is how the communication is going to happen. This is how the packet flow is going to look like. So I would not be able to sniff this communication, as I'm not having those packets at my interface. Those packets are not reaching my interface here.
So, sir,
Sir?
I have a doubt regarding this. Uh, when people do MITM or sniffing attacks in open public Wi-Fi, so then how do they capture the packets if the communication is not happening? They are not part of the communication.
Because they perform MITM attack. That is the answer. Okay. If you are not going to perform MITM, what is MITM? What is MITM? Man in the middle attack. The attacker tries to insert himself in between of an active communication, like Alice and Bob are communicating with each other. Attacker is going to try to insert himself. Now the packets are going to be sent through the attacker. Then the attacker would be able to sniff everything. Okay.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, at start, the switch broadcast the IP ना?
Sorry, broad.
सर जब स्विच स्टार्ट होता है तो वो सर आईपी के लिए जो उसकी टेबल होती है वो उस वक्त खाली होती है, तो वो ब्रॉडकास्ट करता है ताकि वो आईपी लिख पाए, मतलब सेव कर पाए अपने उसमें.
Nope, that is not the case. I believe you are talking about the ARP protocol.
नहीं सर, स्विच
स्विच तो आईपी क्यों ब्रॉडकास्ट करेगा, आप मेरे को बताओ. स्विच क्यों आईपी ब्रॉडकास्ट करेगा?
नहीं सर, जैसे बी ने इंफॉर्मेशन भेजनी है सी को,
हाँ,
लेकिन सर स्टार्टिंग में तो स्विच के पास कोई इंफॉर्मेशन ही नहीं है ना कि ये आईपी किस, मतलब ये मैक एड्रेस किसका है.
so you are talking about ARP protocol, address resolution protocol, that is responsible for IP address to MAC address binding.
ओके सर.
ये IP एड्रेस किस MAC एड्रेस के साथ असाइंड है, इस MAC एड्रेस का क्या IP एड्रेस है, इस IP एड्रेस का क्या MAC एड्रेस है. That is what you are asking, right?
ओके सर.
So ARP does not works at the switch in the switch cases. Okay, I'm going to talk about ARP as well, don't worry. So coming back to my point, in this case scenario, I would not be able to capture this conversation between B and C. And if I say the conversation between B and internet, how that is going to look like? B is sending some data to the router, and router is sending that data to the internet. Okay, some internet, some cloud over here. Okay, and that's how those packets are being sent and received. So again, I would not be able to capture that packet because I'm not even receiving those packets at my interface. Okay, so this is also gone. The only thing left is the conversation between A and C. How that is going to look like? The conversation between A and C. Those packets are going to be received by the A's interface. And the conversation between A and B, those packets are going to be received by the A's interface. Okay, if I just simply start a sniffer on my machine, I would not be able to see everything that is happening in my network. I would only be able to see those packets which are coming or leaving from my interface. That's all. My NIC, my network interface card. This thing is clear?
Yes.
Okay, let's proceed further. Now let's talk about MITM. MITM is basically known as man in the middle attack. Okay. So what happens in case of MITM is, like, let's take an example over here. Let's take this example. Okay. So for the timing, let's assume that there is no attacker in between. Okay. So if there is no attacker in the network, and there are two machines, one is your Alice and another one is your Bob, A and B. The communication between A and B is going to be like this way, to and fro, through the switch. Okay. Now let's say attacker comes in the network. Okay. Still, no attack has been performed. It is simply connected to the network. The flow of the traffic is not going to change. Okay. Still, the traffic is going to be sent from A to B through the switch and from B to A through the switch. This thing is clear?
So can you please repeat one?
Now what I said is, I am inside a switch based network. Okay. There are two machines connected, A and B. Okay. Now when A wants to send some data to B, the data is going to be sent to the switch first, and the switch is going to forward the data to the B. And vice versa. When B wants to send the data to A, the data is going to be sent from B to switch and from switch to A. Okay. This much thing is clear.
Yes, sir.
Now let's introduce another device here. So there's a third device. Let's say C. This is my third device. This is C. Okay. Now, if I introduce another machine in the network, there is going to be no effect in the network. Okay. Still, A and B are going to communicate in the same manner. The flow of the traffic is going to remain same through the switch. Switch is not going to send that data to the attacker. If A is trying to send some packets to B, switch is not going to send those packets to the attacker, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now what attacker is going to do is, attacker is going to perform some kind of a MITM attack. Okay. Man in the middle attack. I'll talk about the attack as well. let's say attacker has performed the MITM attack. Now what is going to happen is, now the traffic flow between A and B is going to be like, if A is trying to send some data to B, it is first of all going to be sent to the switch. This switch is going to send this data to C. The C is going to send that data back to switch, and then that data is going to be sent to the B. This is going to be the new flow of traffic. Okay. Similarly, when B wants to reply something back to the A, that's how data is going to be sent back. Getting my point?
So this type of MITM attack manipulates the CAM table.
Yeah, right. So there are a variety of MITM techniques, like CAM table flooding is one of them. ARP poisoning is one of them. Okay. So what happens in case of CAM flooding? What happens when we try to manipulate the CAM table? As the name suggests, yeah.
So
Go ahead.
we kind of do a DOS attack where the CAM table is overloaded, so the switch starts acting as a hub and it broadcasts all the information.
Right. That is CAM table flooding. Okay. CAM flooding, you can say. We try to send n number of packets to the switch. Okay. There is a upper limit to the number of entries which can be written in the switch CAM table. Okay. Let's say that value is, let's not just say, I am telling you the actual values ranges from 60,000 entries to, I believe, 128,000 entries. Okay. What the attacker is going to do is, attacker is going to try to send, let's say, 130,000 entries, fraudulent entries to the switch. Okay. Now, once the CAM table is overloaded or flooded, this switch is going to go to the failure state, and it is going to start acting as a hub. Okay. Once the switch starts acting as a hub, all the communication is going to be broadcasted. If the communication is being broadcasted, the attacker would be able to sniff all the packets that are being sent from Alice to Bob, A and B. This thing is clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's talk about ARP poisoning attack or ARP spoofing. So first of all, what is ARP protocol?
So you just explained that it binds the MAC address to the IP address.
Right. Address resolution protocol. Okay. It is responsible for your IP to MAC address binding. Okay. Sir, intercept करके details भी तो change कर सकते हैं, right? You can modify the data as well. Okay. Let's do clear here. Right. So this is a diagram for ARP poisoning. Can anyone explain me, first of all, what is the protocol and what is ARP poisoning? How does this protocol works? When a system has an IP address but doesn't know MAC address, it uses ARP to get the MAC address. Okay, right. So what happens exactly is, let's say, have you guys heard about ARP table?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So I have got generally IPv4. Okay, I have got 4 devices over here. Okay, one is Alice, one is Bob, one is attacker, one is switch. Okay, let's just discard switch for the moment, or let's just not discard switch at the moment. Let's consider it as well. So I've got 4 devices over here. Can you tell me where is going to be the ARP table?
Switch.
Switch. What about others? Other students as well as other
No.
devices. Hmm?
Mm,
Where is going to be my ARP table? I have received one answer, that is switch. I have 21 students present.
Sir, I am I'm confused between two answers. Either it can be in the switch or it is stored on all of the devices in the network.
Okay. Let me guys mark you present. Let me mark you guys present. Yeah. So essentially ARP table is going to be there in each and every device here. Okay. There is going to be an ARP table in this machine that is named as Bob. There is going to be an ARP table in Alice. There is going to be an ARP table in Attacker. There is going to be an ARP table in Switch as well. Okay. I am a host here in my network. I will be having an ARP table. I can simply open my command prompt and I can type ARP space hyphen A, and this is my ARP table. Okay. Which IP address is having which MAC address? Okay. So what happens in case of ARP spoofing is attacker tries to send fraudulent ARP packets. हाँ शाश्वत, फोन आ रहा है?
Yes, sir.
फोन आ रहा है?
No, sir.
गाने सुन रहे हो?
नहीं sir.
हैं?
सर वो शायद बगल में किसका फोन बजा रहा है।
अच्छा, चलो कोई बात नहीं. So, okay. Coming back to my point, what happens in case of ARP poisoning is my attacker is going to send fake ARP packets, fraudulent ARP replies, or I can say unsolicited ARP replies to my victims. Okay, in this case, that is going to be Bob and Alice. And what it is going to do is, first of all, let me try to create an ARP table over here. Let's say annotate text, and let's say this is my ARP table for Bob. Okay, ARP table. This is my Bob's ARP table. In this ARP table, there is going to be an IP address for Alice 10.0.0.7. That Alice is at what MAC address? A something like that. Okay. That's how the ARP table of Bob is going to look like. This thing is clear?
yes, sir.
Okay. Similarly, there is going to be an ARP table at the side of Alice as well. On the Alice side, the table is going to look like that Bob's IP address is 10.0.0.1 is at what MAC address? Is at BBBBBBB. This is the MAC address of the Bob. Okay, that's how it is going to look like there. Okay. Now what attacker is going to do is attacker is going to send these fraudulent replies, ARP replies, which is going to say that 10.0.0.7 is not at AAA. Instead, 10.0.0.7 is at CCCCCCC. Okay. And it is simply going to override this thing. Oops. I was trying to change the color here. Yeah. It is simply going to rewrite the values here. Okay. And similarly, fake ARP replies are going to be sent to the Alice as well, so that these values are overwritten with the attacker's MAC address. Okay, the 10.0.0.1 is at this MAC address. Okay, this is essentially your ARP table poisoning, ARP cache poisoning, ARP poisoning, ARP spoofing. These are like just different names for same one and the same thing. Okay. So now what happens is when these entries are modified, when now let's say Bob wants to send some message to Alice. Okay. So in the packet, the destination MAC address is going to be written as CCCCCC. That packet is going to be sent to the switch. Switch is not concerned about the IP address. Switch is only concerned about the MAC address. Switch is going to see what MAC address, what is the destination MAC address. It is going to see CCCC, and it is going to send that packet to the attacker. Originally, it was supposed to be sent to the Alice, and the same is going to be the case from the Alice side. Okay. Now that depends upon the attacker. If attacker wants to send these packets, attacker wants to forward these packets to their to their intended destination or not. So the attacker can do a DOS attack here as well. That Alice and Bob are not able to communicate with each other. That is one thing. So I hope the theoretical part is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now I have one question. My question is, this is for single session, right? Right. Why this is happening? Why Bob is accepting ARP replies from the attacker? If Bob is not going to have entries with respect to the 10.0.0.7 IP address, Bob is going to generate an ARP broadcast. If Bob already have a MAC address mapped to that IP address, Bob is not going to generate an ARP broadcast. If Bob have never asked for the MAC address, and I'm telling you that, okay, this is the Alice MAC address, why is Bob accepting it? Nope, that is not the answer.
I think after every fixed time, ARP table refreshes itself.
Right. So
sir, when it refreshes, it broadcasts the packet, and whoever gives a reply, it accepts its MAC address.
okay, but my point here is, if I did not ask you any question, then why am I going to accept your reply or your answer? So this is the flaw in the implementation of ARP protocol. Okay, ARP accepts unsolicited replies, those replies for which it never asked for. ARP still accepts them and modifies its ARP table, updates its ARP table. ARP does not check after receiving the ARP reply that did I send any ARP broadcast with this respect? Okay, clear?
Yes.
Okay, great. So after this MITM is done, then if I start a sniffer on my attacker machine, then the attacker would be able to sniff all the communication that is happening between A and B. Okay. So a question here. So it will even accept packets without authentication. Is this your question? There is no authentication mechanism here. We never talked about any authentication mechanism in ARP protocol. Okay. 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 So you guys can try doing ARP poisoning. Okay. You would be needing 3 machines in your virtual network, definitely, in your lab environment. Okay. Okay. What next?
Sir, I have a question regarding ARP poisoning. How does an attacker machine corrupt the ARP table of a different machine? I mean, does it require access to it, or?
No, no. We do not require access to it. We just start sending these fake ARP reply packets. I can show you how it actually happens through a practical, but I believe that is going to consume a lot of time.
Sir, can you show it in one of the weekend session? Like, how much time will it take?
One of the weekend sessions. Okay. Okay, let me just show it to you now itself. Okay.
Sir, if it'll be taking more than 10-15 minutes, and I don't think it's worth it.
Let's try. So one of them is going to be my attacker machine. Other two are going to be my victim machine. Okay. I could have used Windows as well here. It is going to work perfectly fine with Windows as well. So that's not an issue. Okay. So what do we have here? Let's start creating some notes from the beginning. disconnected. Why is it disconnected? This is connected. This is also connected. Not yet received an IP address. Let's start creating some nodes over here. So there are three machines here. Let's call it Alice, Bob, and attacker. Okay. Let's start marking the IP addresses as well. Um, Windows portable, Windows 7, Windows 2. Okay. So let's say this is my Alice. Okay. And the IP address is 192.168. Control Shift C. One 29. And let's see. Everything is fine here. Why is it behaving this way? Let me just boot a Windows operating system here. Okay. Okay, so 128. I've got another machine over here. Let's make it as 128. Let's make this one as Alice and 192.168.75.135 as the attacker one. Okay. Get here. This machine is of no use. Just put it down. Shut down. So here, this is going to be my attacker machine. This is my one victim. And this is my another victim. I have mentioned the victim IP addresses here. 129, 128. Okay. Let's get back here. Let me try to see ARP tables as of now. What all ARP tables do we have here? ARP sudo ARP. Okay, just check out ARP table here as well. Okay, do a basic ping for connectivity test 192.168.75.129. Nope. Ping. Okay, my numlock is off. Ping 192.168.75.129. Control C 135. So my machines are able to communicate with each other. Okay. From here, I can try doing a ping 192.168.75.135. Ping 192.168.75.135. Working 128. Not able to ping, not an issue. Just to check out the ARP table once. Okay. Check out the ARP table here. So in my Windows machine, I have got this ARP entry of 1.129. This is my Alice, Bob, my another victim, and its MAC address, right? This is clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Here I can see .128 This is my Windows IP and Windows Mac. Okay, let's get here sudo arp, and here I have got 128 and 129 and their corresponding IP addresses.
Sir, which one is the attacker IP?
Dot 135.
135.
Okay.
Yeah, here it is. So from here I'm going to perform the ARP poisoning attack using the command called ARP spoof. ARP spoof sudo ARP spoof. Do we have it here? Nope. Able to install ARP spoof is, I believe, part of dsniff package. Yes, let's see. Okay, now my ARP spoof must work. Yeah, up and running. I need 2 terminals here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to type ARP spoof -I for interface, that is ETH0, -T is for target. One time I'm going to run this command from the attacker machine like this: ARP spoof -I ETH0 -T. Oops. This IP address followed by this IP address 192.168 dot blah 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 128. Okay, and there's a space in between. Control C. So I'm going to use 2 terminals and I'm going to run these respective commands for poisoning the ARP tables. 192.168.75.128 192.168.75 dot 129. This is one thing. Get this on another terminal as well. Okay, let's run it. Let's run it here. So here you can see what is happening is on the left hand side you can see it is generating these ARP replies. It is saying 192.168.75.128. It is sending this. It is trying to poison the ARP table of 129, and 129 is my Alice. Okay, and in this case, I believe 129 is my Windows, or no, 129 is my Linux. This is my Linux, and this is my Windows. Okay. So here you can see it is saying that 128 is at 0C29144633. This is the MAC address of my attacker Kali. Okay. And on the other hand, here you can see that it is saying to my Windows, that is 128, that 129, that is Alice, is at 29.14.46.33. This is the attacker MAC address. How can I verify? I can verify the same thing by checking out the ARP tables here. Okay, just simply do an ARP -A, and you can see initially these were the entries. 129 was at this MAC address. Now 129 is at this MAC address. You can see the MAC address has been changed. Can you see? ARP -A, and now you can just keep them side by side and check out the values, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
This is, we have poisoned the ARP table of the Windows. Let's check out the Linux as well. Open a new table here, sudo ARP. Now here as well, you can see keeping them side by side, 128 is mapped to a new MAC address. The values has changed. This MAC address essentially belongs to the attacker. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now what is going to happen is, if I'm going to stop it from this side, let's just do Control plus C here, Control plus C here. It is going to make those ARP tables, ARP entries back to normal. Okay, now it is generating those ARP replies the original way. 128 is at this MAC. This is this MAC. Now if you are going to check, these entries are going to be back to normal. You can check out, these entries are now back to normal. Right.
So sir, once the ARP spoofing is done and the IP address of the victim is binded to the attacker's MAC, if we turn on Wireshark, can we have access to all the packets which are being sent to the originally the victim's IP address?
Yeah. Yes. Right. So I hope now you guys would have better clarity over it. Okay.
Yes, sir.
अब कोई डाउट नहीं रहना चाहिए, मेन चीज ये है. ठीक है.
नहीं sir.
चलो जी. So okay. So that would be all for today's session, guys. Okay. आज इतना ही
No,
करेंगे.
sir.